One of my favorite ways to do seasonal decor on a budget is grab some inexpensive wood, head outside, and get building. So today we are going to do that for fall and Halloween. You're watching Whiskey and Wet. My name is Whitney, and a huge welcome back to my whiskey craft buddies who are here each and every week to DIY with me. If you're not already a craft buddy, be sure to hit subscribe before you leave so you don't miss any future fall, Halloween, and Christmas content coming your way. And I want to give a huge thank you to Fabric by Gerber Life for sponsoring today's video and supporting Whiskey and Wet.
Right off the bat, let's do a super simple but super cute project. I had some scrap 2x4 left over from these Christmas trees I made for Christmas in July, so I cut them down into 3 different rectangles. Now, you could use whatever scrap you have, or you can even grab some craft wood from any craft store. Then I'm going to use these wood peg dolls. I just saw them at Dollar Tree, 4 for the $1.25 price point, and I'm going to stain them in golden oak. While those are drying, I'm going to mix up some paint stain mixture. So what I do is I just water it down. So like if you're used to a whitewash, this is like an orange wash. I'm going to mix it with some water, rub it on, and let those dry. Then I'm going to take this espresso and I'm going to distress the edges. They needed something on top of the orange, but I wasn't sure what, and this was perfect. It's really going to bring out that wood grain, and it is going to make them look a little more rustic than just the orange. Once those dry, add some hot glue to the top. So on 2 of my pumpkins, it was the actual top of the 2x4, and then one I turned it on its side to give it a little whimsy. Then I ripped up some buffalo check ribbon that I had left over from my fabric DIY video, and I tied that in some raffia on all 3. What did I say? Super simple. They are straight cuts and you can do whatever size you want. See? Super cute, super simple. You could definitely tackle that one. Now let's do this next one equally as easy. I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but I love the value wood section at my hardware store. This is Menards, but they have them at a lot of places, things they've cut, overstock, all the things. So I was able to find 3 1x6 boards cut to about 34 inches for $1.50 each. And the best part is I didn't have to cut them down. Cut my 3 pieces of value wood here, and if we go up here to the top, I have just one that's a little bit long, so I'm just going to get rid of that so they're all even. And then I need to cut some scrap wood for braces on the back. So I'll probably do 3 pieces, and then we'll assemble it for a sign that you can literally paint whatever you want on it. It'll give you a blank canvas. Once I shaved my little piece off, I cut some 1x2s to 16 inches. I did 3 of those, and here is what is going to look like when you've got your braces. Now to assemble this, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our wood and figure out what knots and grain pattern we want on the front of the sign. You're going to put that face down. Your back is going to be face up because we are going to give it a quick sand. Then we are going to add wood glue and those braces onto the back. You want to make sure that they're wide enough that they're going to stretch over all 3 pieces of wood. That's what's going to keep this all together. And then once you have the wood glue down, I am using 1 1/4 inch brad nails, but you could easily just clamp it down and let it dry with the wood glue. This is not structural, so you could definitely go with just the wood glue. I like the nails because that holds it now and the glue holds it for a long time. Then once you've got everything attached, we're going to flip it over, sand the front, sand all the edges. This also gives you an opportunity to make sure that the ends of those boards are flat, because when your sign stands up, you want to make sure that it's going to stand flat. And then you can finish this however you want. For my sign today, we are going to do a black paint stain effect. So I took some black chalk paint, mixed it with some water and just a little plastic cup, and then I took a rag to apply it. What I like about this is it cuts the dry time in half. I also like that if you want to do this indoors, you can do that. It's not as fumey as stain, and it looks beautiful. Then I took a pencil, roughed out the shape of a ghost, and then I used some white chalk paint and a makeup brush to get my outline so I had nice crisp lines. These are Eco Tools brushes. I've been using them lately and they really help with painting. Once I had my outline done, I went through with some more of the paint, but I am going to fill in my ghost. And then as I was looking at it, I was like, this is too stark white with the rustic background. So I just tried something crazy. I just took an extra rag and I wiped it. And this turned out so good. because you could see the black stain from underneath. I pulled it down and it really gave that translucent ghost look I was going for. And I just wiped some down the bottom too, and that looked like kind of the, ends of a ghost. Then it was time to add a face, so I just used a pencil, made some eyes, and then I also put Hey Boo in pencil, and then I used those makeup brushes again to outline it. I feel like one of the biggest things that was frustrating me with hand painting is not having these makeup brushes, because I would get the little fuzzies on the outside of my paint stroke. Not with these. You have to go over a couple times, but it's definitely worth it. Then I'm going to give it 2 coats of clear matte spray paint. This is just going to protect it from other signs, especially when I put it away for the next season. And then we're going to add some of these picks from At Home. I got a pack of 3 for like 2 something, so this is 2 packs. I'm going to staple it to the top, and then I'm going to cover those staples with a little bow that I made with some scrap fabric. If you're interested on how to make this 3-part bow, I made a no-sew version in my fabric DIY video. I will link that for you if you want to check it out. How cute is this little ghosty? Again, you could make this fall, you could make this general, you could definitely make this over for Christmas, but once you know how to make a base sign like that, the sky is truly the limit. I also am really happy with how the hand lettering turned out, so those makeup sponges, definitely add them to cart on Amazon if you want to try this, because they made all the difference, and I am really proud of how everything came out. For this next one, I'm going to use some more of that value wood, you guys. I spent maybe on this whole video like 20 bucks, maybe even 15 in wood, which is awesome. I am going to use a 1x6, and I'm going to cut down 5 different pieces. 15-inch, 12-inch, 8-inch, 7-inch, 6-inch, and then I also cut a 4-inch piece for a little sign I'm going to add. Now, if you can count, there's 5 differing heights from tallest to shortest. We're going to make a little custom artwork here. So I just went through, I won these, but here is what I did for my family of 4 people, and then Sebastian. Can't forget Sebastian. I wanted to curve the top, and I started with the stain container, but with the 1x6, it just wasn't cutting it. So then I found Finn's little paddle toy with the Velcro on it, whatever this is called, and this was like perfect. So maybe you need a plate, maybe you need a paper plate, whatever. And then I'm going to take my jigsaw and just trim the top. Now, if you don't have a jigsaw, you could easily cut just a 45 off of each corner. We'll show how to do that a little bit later, and then just round the edges. So you can do that if you don't have a jigsaw. We're going to take and soften all the edges with 120 grit sandpaper. And then we are going to spray paint all of them white. You can paint by hand, you can use chalk paint, but I was making so many projects this day, the spray paint just was my best friend because it dried quick. It's not super hot in Illinois anymore. I liked it. Then I had to figure out how I was going to represent our dog Sebastian, so I created this file. This is another template over on my blog, and I cut out the ears, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and I traced them onto just a cardboard box that I saved from recycling. I cut them out, and then I added that plus 8 more eyes for the rest of us to some masking tape. What that's going to do is hold it down so it's not going to move around when I take it outside to spray paint it with flat black spray paint. This is another one you can paint by hand, but we were going the easy route and it worked just fine. While it was drying, I distressed all of my pieces, so I just roughed up the edges, but this is totally optional. And then I brought my dried cardboard pieces upstairs to my craft room so I could get assembling. So I started with the eyes, and I just put those where I felt necessary on all of the people. And then I also made a little bow for myself because, only girl in the house. I need to, add a little pizzazz to my ghost. Then we are going to glue the family together because I kind of didn't know where I was going to put Sebastian. So I used the little Henry ghost to split Alex and me, so then that way I could hold them together. Finn goes on the left side, and then I had enough room for little Sebastian. So we're going to glue on the ears and the eyes, nose and mouth, and then I also immediately regretted putting that circle on. I was like, oh, let's put it on. No, I was like, I don't like this. So I pulled it right off. No harm, no foul. Just get rid of that glue. And then I glued little Sebastian's face on there. I also made this little sign with that little scrap, Boo Crew. I cut these letters out on my X tool, but you could easily cut this out on a Cricut or by hand. I will put the free file over in my library, whether you want to cut it out on a laser or a Cricut, or you just want to trace it and paint it on. I love this. I am so excited to display this. Oh, I just love custom family stuff because my family is just so important. Love them so much. Even little BB. We call Sebastian BB, so little BB.
I love this so much. It's crazy to think when I filmed this video last year, I was super pregnant with Henry and we had to announce the name, so it just said like baby boy on things. So now I can do the family of 5 plus some little ears. And it's just nice. He's here, our family's complete, all that fun stuff. Now, speaking of Henry, I've had a lot of you guys message me and comment and ask how he's doing. He's 8.5 months old now and he is doing so well. It is really nice to be getting good updates from the doctors and we are so thankful. If the past year between his health stuff and my health stuff have taught me anything, it's that life can throw you a curveball when you least expect it, and it is so important to be prepared and to protect your family. And that's why having term life insurance gives me peace of mind. Now, it's something you really don't want to think about, but if something unexpected happened to me or my husband, our boys would still have some financial protection. The best part is you can get it set up easily through Fabric by Gerber Life. If you've never looked into it or you're not familiar with it, term life insurance is for a set term, so like 10, 20, 30 years. And if something unexpected happens during that time, then your family has financial protection. You can get money for things like your mortgage, everyday expenses, or even college expenses down the line. Fabric by Gerber Life is term life insurance you can get done today. Made for busy parents like you, all online, all on your schedule, right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes with no health exam required. For so long, I thought to myself, oh, my husband has it through work, but that doesn't cover me and we're young still, so what if he switches jobs? Sometimes it doesn't go with you. So having this in place all in one spot that isn't job dependent is huge. Fabric goes beyond just the insurance too. They offer digital wills, tools to invest in your kid's future, and more, all you can access from your phone. So if you didn't want to think about it and you've been putting it off like I was, now is the time. Join thousands of other parents who use Fabric to protect their families. You can learn more and apply at meetfabric.com/wit. That's MEET fabric.com/wit.
If you saw the mystery box last week, I teased this tiered tray because I needed to make this for my stuff to fit, and so I thought this would be a great project to share with you guys today. So first up, we are going to make our cuts. The first piece of wood that you're going to need is a 1x4. We're going to cut 3 pieces at 10.5 inches and 4 pieces at 14 inches. The 10.5 inches is going to create the square for the top, and then the 4 pieces at 14 inches is going to create the square for the bottom. We're also going to need a 1x2x8 common board, and that we are going to cut once we get our squares assembled. Now, this originally was on the Home Depot's website. They did this with clamps and glue. So if you don't have a Craig jig like I'm using today, no worries. I will link that down in the description so you can go over and see how they clamped everything. I just figured if I was putting weight on this, I wanted like decor. I didn't want anything to fall and break, so I decided to do the little pocket holes. So the main thing I needed to do was check to make sure that I wasn't going to have a screw go through where I'm going to add my little middle part to my tiered tray. So I marked that and then I drilled all my holes. I'm doing 3/4 inch holes and 1 1/4 inch pocket hole screws. Now these are the blue ones. They're indoor outdoor. You don't need the indoor outdoor ones if you're doing this, but definitely don't need a Craig jig, but I gave you my reasons for using mine. Once I have both of my pieces put together, then I'm going to go through and sand it. The reason I waited was because I wanted to make sure I could sand down the edges and make everything kind of lay flat. And then once that's sanded, we are going to cut our 1x2. So the first 2 pieces we're going to cut is 10.5 inches for either side, and then we're going to cut 2 14-inch boards. Now what we're going to do is a lot for the piece that's going to go across the 10.5 inches plus another 1.5 inches on either side. So I'm going to measure it, and for the bottom it is going to be 15.5 inches. For the top it's going to be 12 inches. So you're going to do 2 pieces at 10.5, 2 pieces at 12, 2 pieces at 14, and 2 pieces at 15 1.5. So those are all of your 1x2s.
If you're new to power tools, or even if you're not, I wanted to share this tip because I always forget to record it when it happens to me. So originally my line here to cut this down is right, if you can see it, over this knot. I don't want to do that. That's not worth it. So I'm just going to flip it around and cut it off this end where there's not a knot. I've had a couple times where I've hit a knot and the wood flies. It's just not safe. So we're going to easily be able to cut this down. Just cut it from the other end so you're not cutting right through the knot. So keep that in mind if you're new to power tools.
The middle piece is actually this furniture leg. I got mine from Menards, but any place is going to have them. I found mine in the area by like the felt pads and the like little caster wheels for furniture, not in the wood section. So word to the wise. I bought this one and I cut it down to about 8 inches. That means you cut the bottom little nub off and then the top like rectangle. Then we're going to use some wood glue to assemble this with some brad nails. Again, they just use the glue, so you can go check that out. I decided to do a little bit different of a frame because I didn't sit the frame on the top. You'll see if you go to that other one. So just keep that in mind. So you're going to do the 2 short sides, put down glue, nail it down, and then use your other 2 sides to overlap both your main piece as well as your 2 outsides. Then I proceeded to drill a hole in the center where I marked of each of the squares. And then I'm also going to do a hole in the top and the bottom of this leg. Now, if your leg has hardware in it already, you're going to want to take pliers and remove it. I know the Home Depot ones do, but this one did not come with any sort of hardware in there. Then I'm taking these 2.5-inch screws with the pre-drilled pilot hole. I'm going to drill the screw in just a little bit. I'm going to line this up with the hole that I drilled, and I'm going to screw it in the rest of the way. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the other piece. So then that way that is all in there. And then the last step, this is optional, but I cut 1.5-inch pieces for each of the corners because that's what the original plan had and I thought it looked nice. So you're going to take 1x2 scraps and cut the 4 corners. We're going to glue those down and reinforce with some brad nails. Just make sure you're not shooting your brad nail into where there's another one, so kind of finagle around, so then that way you're not going to hit another nail, you're going straight into the wood. And ta-da! We have a tiered tray. Now my last step was to finish this. I wanted it to feel more like kind of unfinished wood, but I wanted to have some sort of finish on it. So this is the stain that I chose. We just had this at our house and I put it on there. And I love how this turned out. Like I said, this is my setup from the mystery box challenge that came out last week. I will link that if you want to check it out. So when I finished that last project, I had that little like bottom nub from the table leg that I thought would make a great stem. So I decided to make a pumpkin for my front porch. I used a 1x6 as well as a 1x8, actually 2 1x8s from that value wood section. So $7.50 for all of this wood. And I cut them down so that we were working with about 34 inches. Then for my 2 1x8s, I took a 2.5-inch cut at 45 degrees. So then that way that would give me kind of a rounded edge that I could sand down. I did that on the top and bottom of just one side, and then I repeated it on the other side because this is going to make your pumpkin shape. Then on the 1x6 that is the same length, however tall you're making your sign, I took a 30-degree angle off of all 4 corners. That is going to have it look like it is curved. Then we are going to get sanding, and I'm going to round those edges with my hand. And then once everything is sanded down, I am going to take my 2 pieces for the bottom, the 1x8s. I'm going to put them next to each other, and then I'm going to use wood glue and brad nails to put that front piece. That is essentially your brace, but you are going to see it. Once that was all assembled, it was time to decide on color. So I decided to do an orange wash, kind of like how we did the black one earlier. I mixed some orange paint and some black, and you could easily apply acrylic paint with a wipe, but the reason I'm doing this is because this cheap Walmart Hello Hobby paint was almost dried out, and so this kind of gave it new life instead of me pitching it. So I was able to use something that I had, but could absolutely use the wipes. Once that is all applied, I decided that I wanted it a little darker, so I ended up doing 2 coats. And then when I went to my craft room to find my letters that I had in mind for this, I didn't have enough to spell pumpkin, facepalm. So I broke out my X Tool M1 and I cut out these letters. This is an SVG, I just cut it out in wood. And the Oh Hello was about 13 inches across, and then the pumpkin letters were 3 3/4 inches high. So you could easily buy like what I was going to do from Amazon, Hobby Lobby, and do this process, but I just cut my own. So if you have a laser, or if you want to do just a decal, you could do that as well, or you could even trace it on. I took those once they were cut out on some masking tape and I spray painted them brown outside, and then I also sealed them while they were sitting there. Then I sealed my pumpkin thing with some Varathane, and I made sure to do the front and the back with the spray just to make sure that everything was going to be sealed. Then I also took that little furniture nub, I don't know what else to call it, and I stained that with golden oak, and then it was time to assemble. So I took some super glue, I got everything lined up, and I applied it to my sign, and then I used some super glue for the top as well. And that's it. I finished it off with some raffia, and this is going to be perfect for my front porch. You could customize this to whatever, or you could honestly leave it as is. I made some smaller versions of these a couple years ago, and I also shared them in my fall video to kick off this year. So if you missed that, I will share that too if you want a smaller version. I'm so happy with how this turned out, and between that and the Hey Boo sign, my porch is going to be styling. I got so many comments from craft buddies saying that you guys loved seeing these fabric apples in my fall fabric DIY video. So I decided to do you one better and also give you some wood ideas. We're going to do it 2 ways, both these caramel apples as well as these traditional apples. For both of these, you are going to need the template, or you can freehand it, but I have a template for you in my free file library. So there's going to be one that's just the smaller apples for the traditional ones, and then there's going to be a 3-tiered one, which I will talk about when we get there. So you're going to just trace as many apples as you want onto your wood. This is a 1x12 that I got for $2.50 in that value wood section. And for jigsaws, you want to make sure you have a good blade with more teeth per inch, and also use a sturdy surface for leverage. I feel like a lot of people are scared of jigsaws, and I promise you, if you don't even have a chop saw, a jigsaw would be great. I used a jigsaw before I really got into a chop saw, and you can also make straight-ish cuts with a jigsaw, so something to think about. Then once I sanded them all down, I'm going to drill a hole in the center, and I'm using these shaker pegs. Now, I thought there were 4 in the container, so I made 4 apples, but there was only 3. You could also grab some of these dowel pins. You could use a stick from your yard, really whatever you have. You could use some of those dowel little things that we got from Dollar Tree that we showed earlier. Sky's the limit. I stained those, and then I did 2 red apples, 1 green, and 1 yellow. For the yellow apple, I mixed just like a medium yellow color with some brown to make it look more like a yellow apple instead of it being like pencil yellow. And then I did a little bit darker of a green. I mixed that with a little bit of brown. And then I added some contrast and highlights. So at the bottom right corner, I did kind of an L with the original color mixed with a little bit of brown. And I kind of buffed it in. I'm doing this while the base coat original color was still wet. Then I'm going to do the same thing, but adding white to the color. So I added a little bit of white to my red, yellow, and green. And then I'm going to do that in the top left-hand corner. Then I used my darker paintbrush to buff it all in. And really, it may not look like that much, but it does give it really nice dimension, especially when we finish these off. Put those to the side, let them dry, and then when they're dry, I used a white paint marker to add a little whimsy, just 2 lines and then 4 dots, 2 dots per line. You could leave them alone. You could do that with different squiggles. And then I just added some glue to that hole we drilled and a little bit of raffia, and that covers any, wonky lookingness. That makes total sense, but you know what I mean. Makes it look a lot more put together. I love these. They fit really good in my little wood tray here, and they go really well with my apple seed pack. That's also from the fabric video. So if you missed that, you're missing a ton. So just make sure you check that out after this one. I love these. I also think these would make adorable teacher gifts if you want to put the name on there or a photo. I'm loving apples. I wasn't before, but now you guys, I'm on it. So for this next one, for the caramel apples, you are going to want the caramel apple template, because if you want to make the set of 3 like I did, you're going to trace the big one, cut out that ring essentially, trace the middle one, cut out that ring, and then trace the bottom one. I figured instead of having you guys print and waste ink and paper for 3 sheets, we're just going to put it on 1 sheet. So let me know if you like that style of template and we'll continue with it. We've got to keep costs down anywhere we can. Then I'm going to cut down all 3 of these, and then I had some scrap little slivers I had to cut off to make that ghost sign that we made before. So I cut 2 more of those, and I'm going to use those as the stick for the caramel apple. Now you definitely don't need this. I just was using scraps that I had. You could use dowel rods, you could use craft sticks, you could use a stick from your yard, you could use literally whatever you have. You could use cardboard, whatever you have. We're going to do the same thing, go around the edges, kind of sand it down, and here are all 3 of my apples with the sticks. Then to really make them come alive, we are going to paint the top with a deep red color, and you really only want to go down about 1/4 to 1/3 of the way, because we're just going to cover the bottom with our faux caramel sauce. To make that, we're going to mix some gloss Mod Podge, as well as this milk chocolate brown color. And the gloss is going to really, once you mix this all together, I did like an equal 1-to-1 ratio, mix it up, and it starts to look like caramel. We're going to paint that on, and here you want to be heavy-handed because we're going to put some of this corncob bedding. Now, this was a late night Amazon purchase when I decided to make these, and I bought like the Costco industrial pack. So I will be making these for the rest of my life. But Henry will be making these when he's 90 years old. So, we're good on that front. We're going to sprinkle that on top of our super doused wet caramel area and let it kind of hang out, and then continue all the way around. If you have situations where stuff isn't sticking, you could take a little bit more on your paintbrush and put it down, and you don't need it to be like matted down, you just want it to stick. Then my sticks, I just did the golden oak stain and I glued them to the back. Now look at these. Some of the corncob bedding fell off and I'm like, these look like budget caramel apples so bad. We gotta fix this. So here's how I did that. Something else that was really helpful to get this fuller look is I sealed them with this matte clear coat. And then once I sprayed, I sprinkled a little bit more on whichever was my front. And then we're gonna spray it again. And then I'm going to come back through one more time, and then that is going to seal all those little bits in. I love these so much. Once they were sealed, like as you can see, a couple little pieces fall off. I need to maybe spray it one more time, or maybe I'll do a coat of Mod Podge on the top. But I love these. They are so fun, so cute. And I just finished off the top with the same little ribbon and like fabric ribbon and raffia that we did for the pumpkins before. I just love these so much. So fun. And I'm so glad that you guys commented about the apples, because maybe I wouldn't have made these. I have had this cute witch on my to make list for years. I originally found it on Pinterest and I went on a hunt to find where it originated, and it is so hard to find. So if you know who made this, let me know. But I love it and I wanted to do my spin on it. So I grabbed one of those 1x10 boards that I grabbed from, you guessed it, the Value Wood section. And I traced out a shape that would rival the image. So I've got the hat and the face, and I just kind of roughed it out. I don't have a template for this. I just went off the picture. Then I cut that out. I cut a piece for the hat, and then I also cut the nose, so that was 3D. Once I got that all sanded, it was time to do the hat. So I did the black stain. I had a little bit left over from the boo sign, so I did the hat and the brim of the witch's hat, and I made sure to get that as dark as I could while still seeing the wood grain through the hat. Then I took it up to my craft room. I mixed some pink, white, and orange together, and this was a little too pinky, so I added a little bit of brown to get the color I was going for, and then I painted the entire face as well as the nose. Then once that dried, it was time to add the face, so I just followed the picture. I roughed it out with a pencil, and then I went over with both black and white paint markers. And then for the hair, to make it look like the inspo picture, I ripped some canvas, like ivory fabric that I have, just cut a slit, pull it apart. Then I made a little bow as well as a messy bow. I just ripped some strips and tied it up, added some raffia, and then I also added a strip to her hat. This overall, like, is a pretty easy beginner-friendly project, especially because none of these shapes have to be incredibly detailed to get it to work. So if you just got a jigsaw or you're looking at a jigsaw, this would definitely be a good project to do. I think she's so cute. I want to name her Wanda. I know we're big on the names lately, but I think Wanda, Winnie, Wanda. I think I'm gonna go with Wanda.
That is going to do it for this round of fall and Halloween wood DIYs. As always, let me know down in the comments your favorite project. If you want any of the templates I mentioned today, be sure to scan this QR code and check out my free file library. That's where I've got those, plus a ton of other templates, SVGs, printables, all the things. So you're definitely going to want to make sure you are on that list. Also, a huge thank you to Fabric by Gerber Life for sponsoring today's video and supporting Whiskey and Wit. What they do is really important, helping families protect themselves. So if you could benefit from that, be sure to head over to Meet Fabric, MEET fabric.com/wit. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to leave me a comment, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and hit subscribe before you leave so you won't miss a future Whiskey and Wit video. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!